V'zimratya Vayehi li lishua Ozi V'zimratya Vayehi li lishua Ozi V'zimratya Vayehi li Yeshua Ozi V'zimratya Vayehi li Yeshua Ozi V'zimratya Vayehi li Yeshua Ozi V'zimratya Vayehi li Yeshua. Boker Tov. It's kind of wet out there today, huh? Not such great weather, although, we can't do anything about the weather. It's not raining now, so that's nice. The children were raring to go outside at, I don't know, I think it was like 7, a little before 7 or a little after 7, maybe a little after 7, 7:15. Ellis has been up since 4 o'clock, ready to go for the day. I'm not really sure what that was. I blamed it on, since birth, the kids have always worn long pajamas, pants and long sleeves, because my house is cold in the winter and cold in the summer. And so it's just always been a thing. But yesterday he insisted, because today is pajama day, he picked out pajama day for camp, like the pajamas he wanted to wear for camp, which were obviously shorts, which I only stock for things like this. And then he picked which ones he wanted, and then he saw a pair that he wanted to wear last night. Well, I really believe that he didn't sleep well because he wasn't in regular pajamas that he's used to. But anyway, it is what it is. He's up. He's in a good mood. He's raring to go, and off to camp he went. And so, first I was thinking to myself, I'm so tired. I don't know. Obviously on my already tired day, he's up at 4 o'clock. But once you get moving, you're tired, but you just push through, because that is what we do. We just push through. So let's continue together, pushing through this week's Parsha, a little bit more learning. We had some learning yesterday where we talked about the red heifer and how sometimes, like, logically things are hidden from us and we don't actually understand how or why they work, but we're not given a reason, but we do them anyway. And a reminder that we are not, in fact, without purpose, that we have to walk in faith, that we have to be a source of healing for ourselves and for others, and trust that even in the most mysterious parts of Torah, even when we are like, that doesn't make sense, even in our lives when we're like, I can't catch a break, I don't understand, this is insane, where's the message here? There's always holiness waiting to be found. So we continue on. Each parsha has lots of wisdom. Some obviously have more wisdom, more mitzvot, more things to attach to than others. But in this week's reading, in the reading of Chukat, we encounter this moment of perplexity, where commentators for generations are left scratching their heads. Moses strikes the rock. Okay. I can't imagine, traveling, and then God says, hit this rock, and you do it. But the rock is just a rock. Okay, but there's more to that rock. Moshe strikes the rock. Parshat Chukat. The rock and the leader. The people are thirsty. Guess what? They're complaining again. They complained when there wasn't enough food, the manna wasn't good enough. They're complaining that they're walking for so long. They're complaining that, they are thirsty, that this is not what they signed up for. Let's go back to Egypt. But God tells Moses to strike the rock. But before that, he needs to speak to the rock. Moses, you speak to the rock and water will flow. But instead of doing what God said, Moses yells at the people, "Listen, you rebels," and strikes the rock twice. So anger, right? Sensing anger. God just tells him, talk to the rock. Instead, he yells at the people and smashes the rock twice. And water gushes out. I mean, after all, they were waiting for water, right? They were complaining they were thirsty. But God wasn't pleased. In that moment, Moses and Aaron learn that they are not going to enter the promised land. I don't know. To me, this feels like a super harsh punishment. After decades of faithful leadership, this moment seems like almost minor. Like, he's annoyed. Like, the people are complaining. Do you want people to be complaining to you nonstop all day long? I'm sure not. And so he acts out of frustration in a tiny moment. Why should this cost Moses his life's dream, or what he's been working for and towards this entire time? So maybe one way to understand this moment is not as a punishment for a single misstep, but as a reflection of the enormous responsibility of leadership. And the shift needed to move into the next chapter of the people's journey. Until now, Moses has led a generation born into slavery. People who needed strong, decisive, sometimes even forceful leadership. But now they're standing on the edge of something new. This is the generation born in the wilderness, headed for freedom and permanence. They needed a different kind of leadership, perhaps. One that was going to be rooted not in miracles or force, but in a calm presence, in voice, and in trust. I would imagine that in Moses' frustrated moments, he was still a presence. Was he calm? Probably most of the time. But Torah likes to point out the smashing of the tablets, the hitting of the rock, the anger with the people for their complaints, the lack of trust that the people had in him. Is he coming back? What's happening? But Moshe is heartbroken over the death of his sister Miriam, worn down in years by complaints and grief and burden. It falls back on the familiar. He strikes. Perhaps it's less a moment of rebellion and more a moment of exhaustion. Imagine carrying that weight. We've all been there. We know what it is to carry too much for too long. We know what it is to react from a place of fatigue, a place of frustration instead of clarity. We talk about it all the time that we should wait a few seconds before sending that message, or breathe a few deep breaths before reacting to a comment, a situation. Chukat invites us to see Moshe, not as a failed leader, but as a deeply human one that we can connect to no matter how much leadership we have, no matter the clout, no matter the position, no matter where we are, to remember that we all have frustration, we all have fatigue, We are not failed leaders, but we are human. Being human. It also reminds us of something subtle, something small, not to be confused with the profound effects of it. Sometimes the tools that got us through the wilderness are not the same tools that will carry us to the promised land. Subtle but profound. Sometimes the realization, the reminder is the tools that got us through the wilderness are not the same tools that are going to carry us to the promised land. Because growth requires change. Not just in those we lead, but also in ourselves. Growth requires change. And as humans, do we like change? I would say the vast majority of us do not. In this week's Parsha, there's just so much transition. Miriam dies, Aaron dies, Moses is told he's not crossing the river. He's not crossing over to the promised land. The landscape is changing. The people are changing. The Torah holds up a mirror asking, how do we respond when everything around us begins to shift? I don't know. That's a question for all of us. How do we respond when everything around us seems to be shifting? Can we speak instead of strike? Can we listen instead of reacting? Can we grow into leaders we're meant to become, not just for others, but for ourselves? May we learn from Moses's humanity. May we forgive ourselves in moments of weariness. And may we find the courage to adapt, to soften, and to trust that sometimes the most powerful things we can offer is not force, but voice. Together, let us use our voices. Let us forgive ourselves, and let us remind ourselves that we are human. We are one human family, one heart of abundant love. We love you, and guess what? I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you all for who have joined us live, those that will check in later, those that will check in who knows when. Share it with your friends. We will continue to be here together to learn, to lift up, and to love. For Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people will live through us, not by force, but by voice. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. 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 Od Avinu Chai.